saying goodbye. As the Metro North investigation continues, the first victims are buried.
Airstrikes. Jordan takes its revenge on ISIS.
Cancer. The little things, making life easier for cancer patients.
It is February 6, 2015. From Columbia University, this is Columbia News Tonight.
Good evening. Welcome to Columbia News Tonight. I'm Charmaine Nero.
And I'm Samantha Miles. We begin tonight with the latest on the deadliest accident in the history of the Metro North Railway. That crash left 6 people dead and a dozen others hurt. Today, the first 2 victims were laid to rest. The NTSB is looking into what caused that horrible accident. One possible cause, the third rail. Marissa Armas has our report from Westchester County.
The crash took place right here near Valhalla Station when an SUV inside a crossing gate was hit by a Harlem Line train. The line is now up and running, but many people are still wondering how the third rail pierced through the train of the first passenger car. The electrical third rail, which supplies additional power to the train, is believed to have set afire the interior of the first car. According to rail experts, it's very rare for a third rail to break when a train strikes a vehicle.
When it strikes this car, the car is going to be bouncing along the tracks, perpendicular to the tracks, and a portion of that car is going to strike that third rail likely, and it caused it to break.
While the investigation may take a few months, today funerals were held for 2 of the victims. Family and friends gathered to say goodbye to Ellen Brody, who was the driver of the SUV. A private funeral was also held for financier Eric Vanderkar, who was a passenger in the train.
Funeral services for the remaining 4 victims will be held in the coming days. In Dobbs Ferry, Marissa Armas, Columbia News Tonight.
This year looks like it will be the worst outbreak of the measles virus in more than a decade. New cases continue to pop up throughout the country. In Chicago, several children at a daycare were recently infected. A child in Jersey City may have also transmitted the virus. Stephanie Beach has the story.
With the measles outbreak hitting more than a dozen states, including here in New York, parents are worried, and doctors are stressing urgent action.
The single most important thing that a family can do is to get their child vaccinated.
The measles virus is extremely contagious. 90% of people who are not immune and come in contact with it will get it. But the virus is easily prevented with a 2-part vaccine that almost 92% of Americans have received. Yet some parents are turning their backs against science and boycotting immunization.
What they don't realize is that in not vaccinating their child, they actually are putting their child at risk from potentially devastating or even deadly diseases.
Based on a discredited British study, some parents still believe that vaccines cause autism. The group Autism Speaks has done its own research on this. In a statement, it said, quote, "The results are clear. Vaccines do not cause autism. We urge that all children be fully vaccinated." Brett Levy, a father of 2, is frustrated with parents who choose not to vaccinate their children.
It's just disappointing that, something like this that can so easily be stopped and has been stopped for years is now spreading because of those beliefs.
People have to take an active role in their own health, according to Dean Ayman Almohandes of the Cooney School of Public Health.
I think we really need to reformulate our communication campaign about vaccines to bring back the faith in how vaccines can really keep us safe and keep our children healthy.
Experts believe that New York City is prepared should a measles outbreak strike here. Everyone agrees that the best measure parents can take to ensure their children's safety is to get them vaccinated, if they have not already. Charmaine?
Thank you, Stephanie.
Today, a manhole fire prompted the evacuation of an apartment building in Astoria, Queens. Residents ran out into the frigid air, then boarded a bus for shelter. Con Ed is working to fix the problem. Manhole fires have become much more common in the last few years. Experts say the reason is salt used to melt snow on city streets. That salt flows into underground electrical systems, corroding copper wires. Then those bare wires can set off carbon monoxide gases and start fires. As temperatures in New York dropped close to single digits, it's easy for us to complain about the cold weather. But at least we have a roof over our heads. As Emmeline Tay reports, that's not true for everyone.
New Yorkers braced themselves for the cold today, bundling up with scarves, hats, and gloves as they scurried off to their next destination. But for some, days as cold as today can be quite a challenge.
A lot of walking around Penn Station, a lot of hanging out in the library, a lot of public places where you're permitted to be.
Standler is one of thousands who are struggling to keep warm. In December, there was an all-time record of 60,939 homeless people. This number is 67% higher than it was 10 years ago. Standler is seeking shelter at an Urban Pathways drop-in center near Penn Station.
We actually weren't allowed inside, but we were told that through these doors, the area is actually pretty small.
It gets very crowded around mealtime or around 5 in the afternoon when everybody comes back. Then you could have 100 people in there, you could have 110. I mean, it gets so crowded that you're literally, elbow to elbow. I mean, it's that tight.
This is not ideal nor comfortable for those seeking shelter.
Time to time, people get angry and they get aggravated and they want to cause fights and stuff like that.
Despite this, the Coalition for the Homeless says that it is important for the homeless to seek shelter indoors for their safety. In New York City, everyone has the right to shelter under Code Blue, which is in place for when temperatures are below freezing. Emmeline Tay, Columbia News Tonight.
There may be more trouble for NBC anchor Brian Williams. There are new accusations about the credibility of his reporting, including his award-winning coverage of Hurricane Katrina. Williams won Peabody and Polk Awards for his coverage of Hurricane Katrina. He has not responded to the accusations.
Coming up next, Jordan's military promised to attack ISIS until they are destroyed. But did they mistakenly kill an American hostage? And if you thought that New York's sensitive government documents were being safely stored, a recent fire shows why you shouldn't be so sure. Jordan's Air Force Base pounded ISIS positions in Syria for the second day in a row. ISIS claims those strikers killed a 26-year-old American woman that they held hostage. She's not been identified until now. Caleb Willer, an aid worker from Arizona, went to the Turkey-Syria border in 2012 to ease suffering of displaced Syrians. She was kidnapped while at a hospital run by Doctors Without Borders. She has been held by ISIS since then. We do not know if she is still alive, as the State Department could not confirm reports of her death. Her revealed identity comes in the midst of Jordan's recent airstrikes on ISIS. Today in Jordan, thousands rallied in Amman to protest against ISIS and demand revenge for the gruesome murder of a Jordanian fighter pilot. The Jordanian foreign minister says this is only the beginning of an earth-shaking revenge. And as Jordan increases its military response, celebrities are joining the global fight. The hip-hop artist Akon plans to raise money to support Kurdish militants fighting ISIS by performing a charity concert in March. Proceeds will support the military. Today, Houthi rebels seized power in Yemen, dissolving the country's parliament. They plan to replace it with a transitional national council. That new council will be responsible for electing a presidential council. The transition is expected to take 2 years. As fighting intensifies in eastern Ukraine, diplomatic efforts are intensifying. Vice President Joe Biden is in Brussels today. Secretary John Kerry was in Kiev yesterday. Here in New York, Ukrainians are keeping a close eye on the violence at home. Jane Greaves reports.
Congregants of the First Ukrainian Assembly of God are praying for Ukraine. They are concerned about the rising civilian death toll. The Ukrainian American community is collecting donations and raising awareness of the dire situation in Ukraine.
Just sacrifice maybe our time, a little bit of our money, but people that in Ukraine fight on the ground, they're ready to sacrifice their lives. For me, they are heroes.
We are here in East Village, New York, where the small Ukrainian enclave where Ukrainian restaurants, churches, Sunday schools, activist organizations, and we'll ask people what they think of what's happening in Ukraine and what needs to be done.
I wish I could say yes, very much hope, but it all is. It's a question of what you think of Putin. Until he is stopped in some way, the problem will continue.
Jack Brown was born in the U.S., but the hearty Ukrainian food of borscht and stuffed cabbage reminds him of what he had at his grandparents' home.
My grandfather came from there, and freedom and is very important. We have had officials from the administration over there, and they may be supplying arms, they may be supplying money, they may be supplying various kinds of food and what have you, but they need to be able to maintain the territorial integrity.
It's our duty to help them, and our goal that one day Ukrainians would live the life what they're fighting for.
Jane Greaves, Columbia News Tonight.
The planned upgrade of New York City's 911 system, known as the Emergency Communications Transformation Program, is taking heat. Recently, the city's Department of Investigation revealed that the ECTP mismanaged its budget. We spoke with CUNY Public Affairs professor Dan Williams about the issue. He says he isn't surprised the city's projections were so far off. The report says that the improved 911 system is not likely to be finished in the next 3 years. Last week's warehouse fire in Williamsburg resulted in the loss of many confidential documents and called into question just how safe storage is. Michaela Vielo reports.
Paper documents from local New York businesses and agencies, such as the Administration of Children's Services, were lost, as well as electronic files in the warehouse fire. It took over 200 firefighters and over 24 hours to extinguish the flames, and now they are just trying to contain the remaining smoke and smoldering. It is still a little smoky in the air, and it smells very charred in the area. The city storage recall team has been sent out into local neighborhoods and the surrounding streets to gather some of the missing and damaged documents that were lost during the fire. Ron McMurdy heads the recall recovery team. In a statement, he said, quote, "Recall has deployed a disaster recovery and property damage team of more than 24 skilled personnel who are conducting document retrieval in all areas adjacent to the building, including the shoreline, as well as the East River by way of boat operations," end quote. McMurdy says all documents found will be destroyed compliant with federal privacy protocol. Despite recall efforts, the debris was scattered over a 2-mile radius.
I didn't come down here during the actual fire because it just didn't seem like it was safe, but yeah, you can smell it. I was wondering if I'd see any paper flying around.
Many Brooklyn residents took to social media to show what they found. On Instagram, under the hashtag WilliamsburgFire, images of flames, smoke, and debris can be found. Mayor Bill de Blasio took a tour of the site Thursday afternoon and thanked the firefighters for their diligent work. The FDNY is working to find out what started the fire. Michaela Vielo, Columbia News Tonight.
Yesterday in New York City, First Lady Michelle Obama announced a $500 million donation to help end childhood obesity. Today she visited NYU with her daughter Malia, but that is not the only school they checked out. Later on, the first family was spotted dining in Morningside Heights. As the old saying goes, save the best for last. When we come back, so long to Radio Shack, why that 94-year-old electronics retailer may be leaving your neighborhood. And workers who get tips are saying, "Show me the money." The Department of Labor is looking into giving them more of it. Struggling electronics store Radio Shack has decided to call it quits, filing for bankruptcy. Andrew Johnson has more on the future of the 94-year-old company.
Not long from now, the Radio Shack name will be stripped from this storefront. The longtime tech dealer will soon be just a small piece of the Sprint portfolio. The cell phone company will have control of 2,400 of the Shack's 4,000 stores, leaving workers like Alex Dillon without a job.
I have a lot of good memories in here. I learned a lot from the company. I learned to be a salesman, and I think that's something really important that's going to help me with in the future, basically. But if the company closes, that's going to be bad for a lot of people.
Most of the stores that are closing are having clearance sales, like this one, here at 145th Street. Among the people soon to lose their go-to electronic retail spot is Uptown resident Mario Villarizar.
It's a little inconvenient, you know, I have to go out of my way to go find what I need, you know?
Longtime customers, like John Rumley, are aware of the challenges that conventional retailers like Radio Shack are dealing with.
I can understand how competition has set them back.
The chain, around since 1921, was once a leading seller of goods. Now it will just step aside and let the commerce centers of the future, like Amazon and eBay, take center stage. Andrew Johnson, Columbia News Tonight.
The Department of Labor released its job report today, noting strong job growth despite increasing unemployment in January. Nearly 240,000 jobs were added last year, and the unemployment rate fell to 5.5%. Analysts say these trends suggest employers have growing confidence to expand. Meanwhile, the minimum wage debate continues here in New York. We have reporter Lydia Hu with us to talk about recent proposed changes. Lydia?
Thanks, Samantha. Minimum wage for most workers is already scheduled to increase to $9 per hour at the end of 2015. But tipped employees now also want an increase.
We get you some menus, yeah? Yes. Absolutely.
Dave Mila works as a bartender at Mel's Burgers on Amsterdam Avenue, but his passion is acting.
I work for this organization called the Possibility Project. They're a nonprofit theater organization that produces an off-Broadway show for New York City teenagers that is all devoted to theater for social change.
Dave does not get paid for his acting jobs, but as a bartender, he earns $5 an hour, the minimum wage for tipped employees, plus his tips. He takes home $800 per week. The State Wage Board released a proposal last week that would increase the minimum wage for New York's nearly 700,000 tipped workers by 50% to at least $7.50 an hour. Dave says he could use the extra cash.
I currently have student loans out. Like I mentioned, the school that I went to was very high tuition, and I received federal aid. I took out student loans as well and contributed my own cash while I was in school. And to me, it would just, I mean, this job is just, it's to survive, pay rent, and to pay off my loans.
While employees may applaud the increase in a minimum wage, business owners say it's only going to drive up their costs.
There are definitely studies that indicate that increasing the minimum wage does provide a net decrease in entry-level jobs. It's a cost of doing business.
Labor advocates disagree and point to studies that say communities benefit when employees are paid more.
It's been shown that when we pay workers at the very bottom of at the wage scale a little bit more, that money goes back into the economy and does good things for local economies.
I think that it is a good decision to invest in the employees as opposed to investing in other things that may raise your overhead as well.
The Wage Board's proposal is now being reviewed by the State Department of Labor. If adopted by the Cuomo administration, the increased minimum wage for tipped workers will go into effect at the end of this year. Samantha?
Thank you, Lydia.
When we come back, a hair-raising tale of crime and punishment, and a community fights for its right to grow fresh food. Why is the city trying to shut down their gardens? Mayor de Blasio wants to add more than 200,000 affordable residences in the next 10 years. But that has some New Yorkers upset because it could come at the expense of their favorite garden spaces. Liza Lucas reports.
There may be snow blanketing West 134th Street, but inside this greenhouse, tiny leaves sprout from the soil.
This is hybrid collard greens. It's delicious. It's all organic. Like I said, there's no sprays, no pesticides. It's just cut it and eat it.
Tony Hillary is the director of Harlem Grow. He raised more than $80,000 to build the greenhouse. At peak production, they grow 10,000 food plants a month.
This lot was vacant for forever, so I kept calling the city, and finally they said we could use it till 2017-ish.
Harlem Grown has become a second home for the community.
My name's Nevaeh and I'm the garden angel.
8-year-old Nevaeh volunteers at Harlem Grown. Nevaeh and the other volunteers consume most of the food grown. The garden supplements food budgets of almost 60 families.
What Nevaeh doesn't know is that Harlem Grown's greenhouse is built on city-owned property, which has been recently listed for possible development.
We saw that the Department of Housing Preservation and Development was getting ready to put forward a list of properties that developers could apply for to get land for free, but 17 of the sites are actually places that people really care about.
The city understands that, but in a statement, the Housing Preservation and Development Department said, "While community gardens add great value to our city, our mission as an agency is to address the affordable housing crisis and to revitalize and strengthen communities." Harlem Grown's Hillary recognizes the need for affordable housing, but questions what's affordable.
If it was truly affordable, I'm all for it.
The city said it's willing to relocate gardens nearby, but meanwhile, protests continue and a rally has been planned on Tuesday at City Hall. I'm Liza Lucas, Columbia News Tonight.
Down south in Georgia, parents have a new option if their kids misbehave. One local barber in Snellville will make their sons look like old men for free. Some laugh, but not everyone thinks it's funny, calling it cruel and unusual punishment. Up next, why you might think twice about going on Facebook when you're feeling down. And we'll tell you why I'm wearing red today. Here's a hint, it's for a great cause.
A new study just released found a link between Facebook and depression. Users often experience jealousy of the activities of their seemingly wealthier and cooler friends. That can lead them to believe their lives aren't up to snuff. You might be seeing a lot of red today. It's National Wear Red Day, which helps to raise awareness and fight heart disease in women. 1 in 3 women die of heart disease and/or stroke.
We marked World Cancer Day this week, but what you may not know is just how expensive the illness can get. Cancer care can cost up to $11,000 per year. Grace Lee has the story of 2 people trying to make that battle a little easier.
In 2007, Bethany Kendall was diagnosed with breast cancer.
I had a lumpectomy, chemo, and radiation. And when I lost all my hair, I had read something that said the American Cancer Society offered free wigs. So I called and they had me come in and they fit me for a beautiful, gorgeous wig. And wigs can cost thousands of dollars. And I'm like, this is really nice. And there's all these things. And I started researching and finding more and more.
That's when she had the idea for BreastCancerFreebies.com, a website that connects survivors to free resources and activities that could help lessen their burden. This includes products such as makeup and skincare products used to help cancer patients feel better about themselves inside and out.
My favorite are these knitted knockers. They're from a knitting store in Arizona. On Friday nights, women come and knit these, and they're hand-knit, soft, washable prosthetics for women who did not have reconstruction, and they're sent out by the thousands free to anybody who needs them.
Not only can you find goodies like these in the mail, you can also find fun activities online free for cancer patients, such as yoga, swimming, or even cooking lessons.
And that's where Ann Ogden Gaffney comes in. A 10-year survivor of kidney and breast cancer, Gaffney offers free cooking classes to survivors who want to cook their way to a healthy recovery.
You know, my own experience had taught me that that money can be an issue during cancer treatment. You know, when you've got doctor's bills to pay, and you know, or if you've not been able to work and it's just, you know, you're tight for money. Although you need to do this, it's not really what you know, it's not first on your list.
Offering free services to cancer patients and survivors has been healing for Ann Gaffney.
Well, one of the great things about doing this, I have to say, is that each class is its own reward. That's my dessert.
Grace Lee, Columbia News Tonight.
That's Columbia News Tonight for this week. I'm Samantha Miles.
And I'm Charmaine Nero. Have a good night.